the 18th day of February 2011. Bob Chapman will be joining us coming up. Also, Jesse Trentadue, the lawyer who has tirelessly sued the federal government over and over again to get documents relating to Oklahoma City, has gotten bombshell information that in triplicate proves that the FBI was on the ground, knew about the attack coming. The hotel receipts of the head of the FBI anti-terrorism team, who claimed that he'd been in Dallas the day of the attack and flown up there that day, though there was no flight records. We know the hotel he was staying in. That came out years ago. But now there's even more information that he's gotten in federal documents that indeed there were phone calls made to the OKC building warning them of the bombing. And he's also sued and gotten, in one lawsuit, one document from the FBI where they blacked out about half of it. Then years later, he sued again separately and got the same document back, but with other areas blacked out where he got the whole document. And what did it tell us? Southern Poverty Law Center, FBI, running Elohim City and the people that were involved with McVeigh. This is powerful information in triplicate from every different angle you can imagine. New developments today with Jesse Trentadue joining us on this Friday edition coming up in the third hour. He'll be on with Bob Chapman in the last 30 minutes. I've been covering a lot of Ron Paul developments because obviously he's won CPAC 2 years in a row. He's winning many of the scientific polls showing that he is the #1 front runner to beat Barack Obama. And Karl Rove and Fox News have openly declared war on Ron Paul. In fact, just last night, Karl Rove declared war on Ron Paul on the O'Reilly leprechaun factor. And so we're going to be going over that today. We're also going to look at some of the past dirty tricks of Fox News against real patriots, real conservatives. They're there with their global warming pushing, one world government loving Rupert Murdoch. Keep your friends close, enemies closer. Fox News is meant to keep the globalist enemies very close under their tutelage, under their control. So that is coming up. Also, U.S. budget limits border security resources. They've got tens of billions more for naked body scanners and to put telescreens in 9,000 locations like Walmart, telling you to spy on other shoppers, but they don't have money for the border, even though more and more cops, military, feds are being killed, citizens are being killed. It is absolute, total, lawless bedlam, riots going on all over Mexico. And there's just not money to protect our border. Because, see, that's actually in the Constitution. That's where the feds are supposed to be, is on the stinking border. Oh, but don't worry, if you're a citizen coming back in, they harass you intensely. But if you're an illegal alien, come on down. Also, Horowitz and the neocons fear Ron Paul. That ties into the latest Karl Rovian attack. They're now claiming that he's an anti-Semite. Kind of like if you don't like government-run health care, you must not like black people. What does that have to do with ending foreign aid to Egypt, to 100-plus countries like Israel? But, oh, how dare him try to touch the billions and billions of dollars a year that goes to Israel as we go bankrupt? How dare Rand Paul call for a $500 billion cut across the board, including defense? See, the globalists don't care that they're bankrupting us. In fact, they like it because they will then loan us more of our own money back to us. They take it in tax money, loan it back to us. I hear idiots every day on talk radio and in the news saying, why, we need these federal funds. I heard Austin yesterday, the city council voted down what their own board recommended, blocking the naked body scanners at the city airport. And they said, well, we need the $10 million that the feds give us. Yeah, money they take from us, on average, send about 33 cents back to us. And I hear these idiots on talk radio going, well, the city council did the right thing. We need that $10 million free dollars. Free. If I come to you and take $100 out of your wallet and give you 33 back, is that free? No, you just lost $70 or $67.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
It is Friday, the 18th day of February, 2011. Bob Chapman with economic news popping in. Also, Jesse Trentadue with incredible evidence of government involvement in the Oklahoma City bombing. The lawyer who's been on their trail for more than a decade now because they murdered his brother will be joining us with incredible new intelligence that he's gotten via FOIA requests and lawsuits, getting government documents, and we'll also review the facts that the FBI was in place the day before the bombing and then lied about it. We have the hotel receipts, the names of the people involved. We have it all. And the system obviously is not going to like this information today as we continue to expose government-sponsored terror. I have a lot of important news, obviously, here that I'm going to attempt to cover most of right now. And then we're going to go to your phone calls, but I'm not opening the phones up yet because I don't like people having to sit on hold while I cover the news. So what I'm going to start doing here is giving the number out 5 minutes before I'm going to calls, taking a raft of calls, then closing the phone system, then opening it back up again so that people don't basically sit there on hold. Or what happens is as fast as I take calls, more come in, and then obviously we don't end up getting to everybody. Okay, let me just mention the stacks of news I have here. Ben Ali reportedly in coma after stroke. UPI, Reuters, they're all reporting it as of last night. The former Tunisian president, Zain El Abanadi Al Ben Ali, it's a long name, Zain El Abinadine Ben Ali, excuse me, suffered a stroke and was in a coma in Saudi Arabian hospital, a French journal has reported. And it's also being reported that he's in critical condition, according to Radio France. Isn't that interesting? The dictator of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak, we're told is going to step down last week. And then magically he goes and gives a speech and says, I'm not stepping down now, I'm stepping down still in September. And then everybody goes, whoa, there's some type of internal fight going on with Hosni Mubarak and his bosses. And then magically the next day we hear, no, he is immediately stepping down, and then now we've never seen him again. And a week plus later, we're still being told he's in a coma somewhere. Somewhere. We don't know where. I mean, he could be dead for all we know. And then magically, the other ousted Western-backed dictator of Tunisia, he magically has had a stroke now. So they don't blow your head off in broad daylight like they did to John F. Kennedy back in 1963 now. The globalists just have you disappear and no one ever sees you again, and then we're told that you're in a coma. I mean, does anybody actually buy that? We've got a lot of Middle Eastern, North African, and Central Asian news. U.S. troops set for longer Afghan stay. Boy, big surprise. Every year they tell us they'll be staying another 2 years. And then a year later, it's another 2 years. That's from the Financial Times of London. FBI calls for backdoor to snoop the web. Kurt Nemo's report on that. It's also covered by Raw Story, testifying to Congress yesterday. They've already got the snooping grids in place. They just want to legally be able to use it now in court. No warrants, just spying on anything and everything you're doing on the internet, and also tracking good people inside government and corporate America and worldwide that discover globalist crimes. They're able to also spy on them and make sure that different government agencies are blocked from ever actually prosecuting any criminals in government. Kind of like the SEC for 11 years was sent dossier after dossier by insiders detailing exactly what Bernie Madoff was doing with his $100 billion plus theft. And the SEC's job was to protect the founder of the NASDAQ stock exchange and to allow that criminality to continue. And now we just see open criminality where tens of trillions is missing. It's all illegal. Congress can't find out where the money went because the Federal Reserve says they're above the law. Just another illustration of that. And talking about how giant, massive crimes, the old saying is, if you're going to steal, steal big. Because then if you get caught, you know, it was worth it. I mean, if you're going to go for the brass ring of theft, go all the way. But more importantly, if you steal big, other big thieves are afraid to prosecute you because then it might shed light on what they're doing. I mean, that goes back to rules they've had in empires for thousands of years. We saw it manifest with Napoleon Bonaparte, where he was defeated and captured twice. But each time, the British Empire refused to execute him because it sets a dangerous precedent to have an emperor, and that's what he was, of his own making, killed. Because what happened if they got captured? What happened if they got overthrown? They didn't want to set that precedent where they could be executed, so they're always basically marooned, on a prison island and locked down in a palatial, palatial prison facility, basically stuck into a type of purgatory. Now, speaking of that, an article I want to get to a little bit later in the hour, actually several articles, illustrates how in a tyranny, big, hardcore, bona fide, real, out in the open, naked, brazen, hubris-filled corruption is not prosecuted. In fact, it is rewarded. But in a tyranny, they get away with bloody murder, but then things that weren't illegal before are basically prosecuted to set the precedent that the little guys and people that aren't part of the criminal culture can be thrown in the slammer for absolutely no reason. And illustrated by that is the San Jose Mercury News from late last year. The AP also reported it. DA offers deal to high school wrestler in butt drag sexual assault case. And if you remember, grabbing the person and pulling them to the ground is a classic, well-known 2,300-year-old wrestling move from Greece. It's in all Greco-Roman classical wrestling. It's one of the main playbooks. It's one of the main plays. It's like saying that a pitcher can't throw a fastball. It's like saying that a quarterback can't do a handoff. And they arrested him and said that they were going to prosecute him, but then offered him a plea deal. Prosecutors have offered a deal to a California teen wrestler charged with sexual battery for ramming his fingers into the bleep of the high school opponent during a practice match. Well, you reach around and you grab the person and you pull them down. I mean, TSA does it all the time to make sure we don't have bombs. But again, this is a sport where it's a combat sport where you sign on to it. It's a classic 2,300-year-old move from Greece. This is incredible. Continuing, the 17-year-old Clovis youth has been expelled from school and faces trial in Fresno on Thursday. And maybe we should look up whatever happened to him. Now, why do I raise that point? You do a legal move, they try to put you in prison. You play chase now, and I see them expelling children who play tag or who bring their own balls to school and play dodgeball. See, first they banned dodgeball, then they banned tag. Now many schools have banned jogging or running on the playground at recess. I see articles all the time where 10, 11-year-olds are charged under juvenile code for wrestling. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we fought every day. We played football, tackle football every day at recess. We would eat our food in the hour-long lunch in about 3 minutes. We'd run in, grab it, gobble it, and run outside to tackle and wrestle, and people bring their backpacks and pull dodgeballs out. I mean, it was crazy. It was great. And I'd feel so good after lunch when I'd go back to class with sweat dripping from my hair. It was refreshing. You go to jail for that now. Now, if you want to steal $28 trillion and not tell Congress where it went, no problem. You want to shoot little kids up with syphilis under a U.S. government program in Guatemala, you get an award. Now, here's this new one. Iowa girl wrestler, some drama, some sport. And it turns out she's the first girl to qualify for the state finals. And this male wrestler said that, look, I have nothing against a girl wrestling, but I just can't brutalize her. Plus, he was worried about other cases where, an example of this is in judo. I have friends that are into judo. My son took a course in judo, and the first move is to grab someone on their uniform on the I mean, just like I'm wearing a sports jacket right now, it's basically the same, but it's white. You grab the person on the chest, and you grab the fabric. I think it's called a gi. I never took judo, so I don't know. But you grab them by the gi, and then you both try to throw each other. That's the first move of judo. I know enough to know that. Well, in competition judo now, in pee-wee judo, in some schools offer it, you're not allowed to do half the moves on girls. Oh, they're going to be in the event. They're going to compete against you, but you don't do a throw touching their buttocks. You don't do a throw grabbing them by the cloth of their judo uniform. You just basically let them beat the tar out of you. And now, since I heard about this last night, now they're talking about expelling the youth or banning him from wrestling for the year. And he's one of the main contenders to win. So, I mean, I've got a problem. Attacking a woman in a combat sport. Putting your hands on them. But see, all these lines are being blurred. It's like the military making men and women be in the same barracks and take showers together and sit on the toilets next to each other. They're just getting rid of our basic humanity and these basic things that are hardwired into us. And then when you touch the girl, you go to jail. It's like, you're going to wrestle her, but if you touch her, you go to jail. You're like, well, I don't want to do that. Okay, you're out of wrestling. See, you don't play dodgeball, you don't wrestle, you go to jail.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done has been right.
All right, I'm going to get into Karl Rove and the attacks on Ron Paul when we come out of the next break. But in this short segment, I wanted to finish up with the nanny state criminalizing all normal activity that's never been illegal. In fact, isn't even illegal on the books. But the young man, her opponent, Joel Northup, who refused to wrestle the girl, said that he had nothing against her being a wrestler. He just morally couldn't be involved in a combat sport against her, and said that he was standing up for what he believed was right. And I've got the quotes here. His coach came out and said, it doesn't matter if he thinks this is moral and the right thing to do. He should do this so he can go on and try to win the state championship. So it's this message that standing up for what you think is right is wrong, and now the media is spinning it, saying he's a sexist. Well, no. If he did any illegal moves on her, he'd probably get criminally charged. See, they do these things that seem ridiculous to set the precedent that government can do whatever it wants. It's just like the fact that it's been on record that the TSA violates all the OSHA requirements. They don't have any of the radiology regulations and laws in place that clinics, hospitals, dental offices have to follow. They don't do meter test of the radiation generating machines. They covered up and lied about the level of the radiation. They just call the TSA workers in and say, do you have a problem with the radiation from these? And if they say, yeah, they get a pink slip the next week. They're creating an army of mindless idiots. Just like they let the troops use DU when before 1991 the military wouldn't use it, knowing that it kills our own troops, not just the enemy. It has a radioactive half-life of more than 4 billion years. And if you get one whiff of it, it's going to reduce your lifespan by at least 20 years. They just don't care. They're setting the precedent to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and our children are growing up with bag checks, metal detectors, checkpoints, locker searches. They're told to spy on their parents. They're not allowed to play dodgeball or tag. They're prisoners. And then if you are on the wrestling team and do a legal move where you grab someone by the gluteus maximus to flip them over, you see it in the Olympics every day. Oh, my gosh, the police are watching it sexual assault. But in most locales, even though it's the law, when the TSA clearly engages in a misdemeanor, squeezing your genitals through your pants, there's no misdemeanor. When they go in the pants, there's no felony charge, unless you're talking about the county where San Francisco is based. And we had a few months ago, the district attorney on, the county attorney on, and he said, yes, I have officers in the airport, the San Francisco airport, and if I see them touching on the outside of the pants, we're going to arrest them. Now, we haven't seen that happen yet, though I saw several cases in the last 2 days of TSA being charged with assault. because they're on such power trips that they're starting to beat people up. And every day now, for the last week, we're seeing multiple arrests and people pleading guilty, TSA, just robbing people en masse. Wedding rings, engagement rings, $100 bills given to young children as birthday presents, hundreds of thousands stolen, 10,000 stolen from an old lady. On and on and on and on, just robbing people. And it's admitted what they do all over the country. They move you into a secondary screening room to do a strip search, and while they're strip searching you, they go in and rob your bags. I have had the TSA steal sunglasses from me. Eric Mancow Mueller has had sunglasses stolen from him. They will, even if your bag doesn't have locks on it or they're not locked, they'll break your bag open. They'll rip it open. They just don't care. It's all about setting that precedent, and now they have TSA with Homeland Security, with high-powered truck scanners and car scanners in Texas, in New York. The headline last year out of Fox News in New York, 2,000 arrests made by National Guard for drugs, guns, and other paraphernalia, and it showed video on the news of the National Guard out there under TSA training with huge scanners having families drive under giant X-ray machines. Do you know the power of those? We've had radiologists on. Depending on the system, between 10 and 100 times the power of a chest X-ray. And I just saw a newscast 2 weeks ago, again, out of multiple states, in Alabama, Tennessee again, where they just shut down highways and direct people under these scanners. And it showed the TSA people, and they'll have a bunch of different agencies out there, regular Homeland Security, TSA, Viper teams, Army, regular Army, Air Force, MPs. This is in the newspapers. And they'll just stand in there for hours right by the big X-ray system with people driving their cars and trucks through it. I mean, what, just because the government waves a magic wand, those government agents aren't cooking? Because you're the ones out there getting hundreds of exposures per pop. The citizens are getting a horrible exposure as well. I mean, a chest X-ray is a big deal. 10 to 100 times, roughly, depending on which machine. And hey, you've got the answer. Just laugh at me. Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., we are here live. Thank you so much for joining us. The websites are Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com, and PrisonPlanet.tv. We have the specialty sites getting into eugenics, like WhatIsTheEndgame.com. We have JonesReport.com and other important sites. Thank you for joining us. Now, I'm going to fire the phone numbers out on any of the issues I've mentioned or any stories that you want to get into. Or certainly the next report I'm about to cover, dealing with Karl Rove openly declaring war on Ron Paul here in just a moment. But the toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231, and we'll get you up and on the air today. Now, on Tuesday, I made the point here on air that Karl Rove and Roger Ailes are the people that are really running Fox News. And, of course, it's admitted that Karl Rove is an advisor to Fox News on the way they present politics. And we see the dirty tricks of Karl Rove all over Fox News. We see them routinely interspersing old video of people clapping for people that they're pushing when they weren't really getting standing ovations. We see them last year putting a microphone in with the Mitt Romney supporters when Ron Paul won CPAC and it was announced, so they could boo right into the microphone to make it sound like the whole audience was booing. We covered it last year. This last weekend, they did it again when Ron Paul was announced the winner, but because they weren't able to pull off the scam with the microphone with the Mitt Romney contingent, they just played the video from the year before. And they said that that was a mistake. But in an article we wrote about this, I saw one of the commenters put it very, very well. Oopsie. Accidentally used Glenn Beck rally footage, making it appear that Michelle Bachmann had a huge rally. Oopsie. Accidentally used Sarah Palin campaign footage, making it appear her book signing had an immense response. Oopsie. Accidentally used doctored photos of New York Times reporter and the editor with yellowed teeth. And they've been caught warping people's faces as well. More receded hairlines, enlarged noses and ears protruding out. Remember that? Oopsie. accidentally made it appear that Ron Paul's choice at CPAC was being booed when he was actually cheered. Mistakes will happen. That's what the commenter said, making a joke about it. And I remember all of those Fox News instances and more. Now, obviously, on the surface, Fox News seems better. I mean, MSNBC is just completely un-American, totally anti-Second Amendment, pushing Obamacare, pushing eugenics, pushing the case for killing Granny, creating total race-pimping division, balkanization. I hate them. They have special documentaries they air where they're talking about how I'm the greatest evil on earth. They're completely George Soros manipulated. So they give you false choices. What, do you like MSNBC or CNN then? No, they're bad. But Fox is a case of keep your friends close, your enemies closer. Fox, for over a decade, has told you there's no world government. There's no plan for a global cashless society. The central banks aren't robbing you. The Federal Reserve isn't private. Ron Paul's dangerous. Ron Paul's people might want to blow things up. We need to taser them. Remember all that 3 years ago when Ron Paul had a chance to win the primaries? And they kept saying, he's a loser, he's bad. I mean, there's a compilation video in the article that Watson wrote a few days ago, a 10-minute video just showing dozens and dozens of examples of them lying about him and demonizing him. Now, fast forward to 2010 in the Republican primary, Rand Paul is demonized by Fox News. He's lied about. They put out all this stuff that he's a big liberal. Then when he beats the Republican establishment candidate, they kind of halfway act like they like him. So MSNBC comes in and runs the hoax that he's not a doctor, that he's kidnapping women, that he worships Aqua Buddha. That backfires on him. He goes from 6-7 points ahead in polls to 15 points ahead. So they've gotten so discredited at MSNBC and at Fox News that Fox News has said, okay, we can't beat them, join them, so we get their confidence. Let's admit some world government. Let's admit some global cashless society, control grid. Let's admit that Google is NSA run. But then let's attack people that don't like being spied on without warrants as liberals. We played that clip yesterday. So you can see their battle plan. It's 110% clear. Now, I said on Tuesday, watch, Karl Rove is going to openly declare war on Ron Paul. Because they can't have real conservatives, real libertarians focusing on the real power structure, the big private central bank that's hijacked our nation. They want us fighting with each other as liberals and conservatives, because if we ever wake up to the outside powers that have hijacked this nation through fraud, we will come together and remove those corrupt globalists, and then we can have a real debate about the future of this country. And so in a 7-minute piece, we're not going to play all of it because I have to stop the tape every 10 seconds to analyze the lies. Karl Rove throws down the gauntlet. And he talks about, well, he does a bunch of things. This is why he's a master of deception. He comes out and says that it is a tiny minority that doesn't believe that Barack Obama was born in this country. Really, Gallup poll has more than 25% of Democrats questioning it, and as high as 60+% in some Gallup polls. Others are in the low 50s. But it's over half of Republicans, and if you look at independents, it's more than half of independents. So any way you slice it, the majority of politically active Americans question Barack Obama. And he won't release the birth certificate. They now admit that it's a receipt of birth certificate, never the original. But the first lie is he says, well, it's a tiny minority that question the provenance of Barack Obama's birthplace. This is very frustrating because there's so many lies to cover. Then he does a mixing of issues, knowing that a lot of conservatives don't like 9/11 truthers because they just can't handle the horror of it. And I can understand that at a certain level. It's very painful to admit and also very scary. So he says if you're a birther, you're a 9/11 truther. So another form of divide and conquer. And then he goes on and says, you're going to let the Democrats win if you continue with this birther stuff. So you know it's a lie when he says it's a tiny minority that believes that Obama might not have been born in this country. We know he gave up his citizenship in Indonesia, but we know that's not true. We know Karl Rove's running the dirty tricks of showing Ron Paul being booed, and it's all fake, and they've now had to admit that. You know this, and so if you're conscious and you're watching it, you understand. Karl Rove has been attacking the Tea Party. Karl Rove's been trying to take over the Tea Party. Karl Rove is trying to position this for the establishment to ensure that the left flank and the right flank of the globalist is covered. And they're worried about Ron Paul. And they're lying to you and saying he can't win. They're lying and saying he's not really a libertarian or a conservative. They're lying and creating that illusion. Last year when he won CPAC, they said, well, this doesn't really count anymore. They always said it was the most important thing previous to that. Now they say, oh, it doesn't really matter, plus he got booed. This year they couldn't stage the booing, and so they say, well, we'll just play the old tape and say he just got booed. This is what they think about you. And Americans have to make a decision. Liberals, are you going to attack Fox News from a leftist position that's a fraud and sit there and still cheerlead around the corrupt Democratic Party? Or are you going to attack the corrupt, controlled media system for what it is, crooks on the left and right working together to keep the American people in the dark? And conservatives, you've got a decision to make. The fact that Fox has been forced to more and more cover the New World Order shows that the alternative media has done its job. And that if we continue to drive this, they're going to fail. Now, the largest issue here is how Karl Rove runs this hoax that Ron Paul can't win, and if you vote for him, you waste your vote. He's the only guy that can pull in the libertarian vote. A lot of liberals who don't like him on economics or abortion, but do want to end the wars. He can get them to cross over. He can get... And this, it's shown in scientific polls, he's the most popular in most polls, or number 2 in other polls against Mitt Romney. He's the guy best suited to go up against Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Obama. But then Rove goes forward with the key. And he says, we're going to lose as Republicans if we don't stand up and ostracize the Ron Paul wing of the Republican Party. So he's telling you, go after them. And then he lies and says, but they don't have any power. No, they're scared to death. They don't want to have to address this. They don't like the fact that their dirty tricks are blowing up in their face. They're scared. They're weak. They're frauds. They're jokes. They engage in the banker bailout takeover with the Democrats. They're scammers. The people that run Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, are top globalists, openly pushing the carbon taxes, supporting the assault weapons ban. Look at their record. Look at their fruits, not their rhetoric. And again, I don't make it my business to sit here and analyze Fox or even really watch what they're doing. But when they're engaged in this type of throwing down the gauntlet, they've got to be called out on the carpet for it. I can't help it. Back it back up to the start. He had a Freudian slip. There is a healthy dose. See, he sees it as healthy. I mean, an unhealthy dose. And then he goes in to say it's a tiny minority. And O'Reilly goes, it's 50+%. And he goes, no, I don't believe that poll. Really, he keeps winning the polls, scientific and at CPAC. See, they're there to make sure Campaign for Liberty doesn't actually take the states back. Ron Paul doesn't even get into birth certificate. He gets into all the issues Rove is about to mention. That's another lie. Again, I've just got to stop it. I can't let these lies go by. It's just everything's a lie. Notice, and this is all semantics. It's why he's a master. He says they're 9/11 truthers. They're Ron Paul supporters. They're birthers. Well, the truth is, most of your birthers are not 9/11 truthers. So he's now saying you're a 9/11 denier if you are concerned about the provenance of where Barack Obama's really from. And then he says they booed Dick Cheney. I mean, Dick Cheney had a 10% approval rating when he left office. He's hated by conservatives. But you do have these kind of soft, wanting Republicans that are just kind of mindless, little pasty, soft people who just believe whatever Fox tells them. And that's the message he's giving to them. Declare war on Ron Paul. Declare war on the birthers. He's telling you what to think. Listen to him. They're not big at all. They're not big at all. And how dare them call Dick Cheney a war criminal? It's on record they lied about WMDs. They consciously lied about it. It's in the Downing Street and White House memos. They told the British, get ready to attack, we're going to fix the intelligence. They lied about everything. They're constantly lying. Governor Ridge is on record now admitting they issued fake terror alerts for political gain. Ari Fleischer admitted that in a press briefing. I mean, these are war criminals. They ordered torture of children in front of their parents. They tried to sell you on evil, America. These are evil people that went along and engineered the banker bailout takeover and then passed the baton to Barack Obama. I'm going to continue to analyze this. We got to be careful. We got to stop them from saying too much. Because Karl Rove, he waves a magic wand and says, forget the poll at 51, 54, 56, 62. I mean, they're all above 50%. Poll after poll after poll of Republicans don't believe in the official story of where Barack Obama was born. And we know he gave up his citizenship to be an Indonesian. And he won't release the original birth certificate. And the governor, Abercrombie, said he was going to release it 2 months ago and now says he can't find it. I mean, they've got a real problem here. But then he goes further and says, we got to do what we did in the 50s and have people like Bill Buckley come out and attack people like the John Birch Society. Sorry, this isn't the 1950s where you could demonize the John Birch Society that was telling the truth about our government setting up a world government, our Pentagon setting up the UN at Presidio, the big banks that run our country wanting a world government. We're now here and it's happening. Sorry, it's 2011. We know the truth, and you can't control the debate and tell so-called conservatives what they should think or what they should do. So he's saying, we got a problem. They don't have any power, but we got a problem. You're a liar, Rove, and everybody knows it. You're about as conservative as Joe Stalin, and you make me sick, and you are a war criminal piece of trash. America is starting to wake up. I mean, I look at the poll numbers and just the liberals I know in Austin. For 4 or 5 years, they've all been buying guns. They finally saw the tyranny of government. They're finally shattering their paradigm. They're understanding that government doesn't want to take care of them. They're understanding when they pay high taxes, it doesn't create some happy, lovey-dovey welfare state, that it's not a safety net, that it's a fishing net to capture and domesticate us. And I want to ask real conservatives something. Would you sign on to abortion? Because the Republican Party hasn't been serious and hasn't gotten rid of it. Ron Paul will. He backs the states banning it. Do you want to sign your name, your soul on to lying about WMDs and killing 1 million Iraqis? What about the Army's own reports of the government and the White House memos ordering torture of even children? I mean, that's how you've given yourself over to the dark side. And I'm not on some high and mighty horse here, you know, like I'm God up on a mountain telling you what's good and what's evil. But I know torture's wrong. I know when our troops get tortured, it's wrong. And when somebody else tortures, it's wrong. And when we torture, it's wrong. I know America's been captured by these offshore banks. And Ron Paul, for close to 4 decades, has been fighting it and exposing it, and he's a wonderful man who has a perfect voting conservative record, a constitutional record. And so you have a choice. Do you pick Karl Rove or do you pick Ron Paul? Do you pick Bill O'Reilly or do you pick Ron Paul? Do you pick Alex Jones or do you pick Sean Hannity? A guy I have on video in Police State 3 Total Enslavement saying every child in America needs an implantable microchip. I mean, I've paid attention to what these people say. And Obama is politically damaged. There are a lot of good conservatives and libertarians getting in at the state level. There's states reversing health care everywhere. There's some good Tea Party candidates in there that tried to defeat the Patriot Act. Rand Paul's trying to stop it in the Senate. But Karl Rove and the globalists are getting concerned. I mean, just remember a year and a half ago before ClimateGate came out that we played clips from Fox TV where Fox was putting out videos bragging how they were promoting carbon taxes, Fox Entertainment, and Rupert Murdoch says he believes in it and wants this globalist tax. That's the tax for the world government. It's out in the open. We were right. Ron Paul was right. I was right. And we don't deserve any credit for that. It was admitted. The globalist program of control is admitted, and we're now deep into it. And so you have these discredited frauds like Karl Rove and the big Republican talk show host out there who for decades had the kook detector test and made fun of people that talked about a global government and the CFR. because on the weekend they're playing golf with them. They're flying around on $40 million jets with them. They're part of the globalist establishment, and Fox News is there to control the liberty movement so that they can manipulate it. But the fact that we forced them to start covering real issues shows we're winning. This is in the 1950s when Bill Buckley, the admittedly was in the CIA, was brought in to destroy the John Birch Society at the time and stop a true conservative movement from saving this country. And all these decades later, John Birch Society said the country was going to be handed over to China, that they were going to be built up because they had Pentagon insiders that told them. They said our own government was funding the Federal Reserve to fund the Russians. That's now all admitted. They've now released all the NKVD files. And the headline of the New York Times was McCarthy was right. But McCarthy was used to set up a police state when he was going after janitors and file clerks. But when he found out the Pentagon was funding the communist, they destroyed him in a week politically. Because it's the big bankers that sit offshore. They create a communist collectivist system to steal your wealth, so government then can control everything and transfer the money to them offshore. It's a very simple equation, and that's how these people have all made their money, and they want to keep the game going. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want. We already knew this because it was obvious, but China is the reported biggest owner of U.S. debt. New WikiLeaks documents show they're basically running much of U.S. policy. They've teamed up with the big banks to basically take this country over. That's coming up. We got Bob Chapman joining us, Jesse Trentadue on new bombshell info on the inside job that was OKC. And we've got the Tunisian dictator in absentia or outside his country, in exile is the word, has had a convenient stroke. That's all coming up. But I want to take a bunch of your phone calls and intersperse news with all of that in this hour. Then two guests joining us in the next hour. It is Friday, the 18th day of February 2011. Let's go ahead and talk to Nick in California. Nick, thanks for holding.
Hi, Alex. I had a comment and then a question. On the websites they were shutting down for allegedly child porn, maybe they should go shut down the Pentagon.gov website. And didn't a bunch of Pentagon employees get caught with child porn, and none of them got in trouble for it?
Tens of thousands. But we got to be careful about that, because the way that story came out, I looked at it, they probably were claiming that tens of thousands had done it when they hadn't, by putting it on their networks as a way to incriminate them, because they know about the $4+ trillion stolen out of Pentagon pension funds in the last 8 years, 9 years, and the fact that there's investigations going on. But what about DynCorp? What about Halliburton, admittedly caught kidnapping children and women? I mean, that's Chicago Tribune, BBC in the last 12 years, and no one ever getting in trouble with that. But yeah, no, they admit these 84,000 websites had no child porn. The government just took them over last week and put messages up on the sites that they were child pornographers. Mm-hmm.
And didn't Pentagon employees a few months ago get caught with a bunch of actual child porn?
Yes, they get caught constantly with it on them in Afghanistan and Iraq and everywhere else. But there was the one case you mentioned was where tens of thousands reportedly had it on their networks. But I'm saying that's how it could be true. But the problem is the globalists operate this way, trying to incriminate people. So you don't know what's true because they don't prosecute the admitted cases of it. And so then they try to, like, basically freak out a bunch of people who are innocent.
Yes. And then my other question was, I've never heard you talk about gang stalking, which I've been a victim of for about a year now. I've only seen like one article on it on your website. I just wanted to see what you had to say about that.
Nick, I appreciate your call. There are moves by the government for secret mind control operations. That's been declassified back in the 70s, MK Ultra, MK Naomi. There are mind control experiments going on at mental health institutions everywhere. There are cases of government harassment against people. But also, there's a lot of paranoia and schizophrenia. I myself have attracted that, obviously, with some people. And, you know, they'll show up or see me on the street and say, you put a chip in my brain. I've seen people go to the county commissioners and say, my dad put a chip in him. You know, I mean, just crazy stuff. And so a lot of this, then I've seen videos on YouTube of people videotaping out their window, and clearly the body language and stuff, it's repairmen across the street fixing a sewer line, and they're digging in the dirt, and people are like, look, they're putting transmitters in the ground. I mean, I think 90+% of it is a bunch of crazy paranoia. Are there weird cults who've been caught sneaking into people's houses, rearranging things, harassing people? Yes, it goes on. In fact, the cult that Charles Manson was running, it came out in the court cases, they called it creepy crawling. And basically it's a form of prowling or peeping Tomming. They would go into Hollywood stars' houses when they were gone at work and rearrange things in their house. Or they would sneak in, almost like counting coup, and slither around by their bed at night and do things. The answer to that is have a big dog to attack people, have a chihuahua to alert you, and have a .357 Magnum and an instant access pistol safe. If I find somebody in my house, I will kill you. 100%, absolutely. No thinking about it. You break into my house or you're in my house, I'm going to unload into your chest. So let's be clear about that. The answer to 1984 is 1776. The answer to oppression is a .357 Magnum. Coming up, there's an epidemic of TSA criminality. Beating people up, robbing their jewelry, robbing money out of their purses and wallets. But don't worry, they're cutting funding for border security and adding tens of billions to the TSA to roll out in every city and state in the nation. We've also got news on the economy coming up at the bottom of the hour. I want to hurry through your phone calls right now because those are always interesting and informative. But Fox News, as we've been covering and pushed it out nationwide, now it's a big national story. We started exposing it, going back 3 days ago. And as of yesterday, Fox News had to respond and admit that they had taken CPAC footage of Ron Paul winning last year, 2010, with another hoax they ran where they only let Mitt Romney people into one side to fill up the auditorium. They put a microphone in the crowd and had them boo Ron Paul. They were unable to pull that off this year, so they just aired the old video from last year. Fully knowing what they did, they aired it all over Fox over and over again, got Ron Paul on and said, are you embarrassed by this? They don't like you. Why'd you win? And now we've had Karl Rove on O'Reilly a few nights ago declare war on Ron Paul and say that we've got to have conservatives come out against him. We've got to stop him because they know that real Americans who understand the serious issues we're facing and know who the players are and understand the true geopolitical system we're facing are winning the hearts and minds of people in the Tea Party that was created originally 3.5 years ago out of the Ron Paul for President movement. And they know Ron Paul has got probably 20 times the juice he had just 3.5 years ago. They're worried because if he runs, even if he loses, he wins by injecting real issues. But in case you missed it, here they are yesterday with the Fox News hosts saying it was a mistake that they aired old footage, itself a hoax, from last year over and over again on Fox News. Okay, and I hope Ron Paul brings it up whenever he is back on the program. But a commenter on one of the stories dealing with this, where they're saying it's a mistake, said, oops, accidentally used Glenn Beck rally footage, making it appear that Michelle Bachmann had a huge rally. Oops. Accidentally used Sarah Palin campaign footage, making it appear her book signing had an immense response. Oopsie. Accidentally used doctored photos of an NYT reporter and the editor with yellow teeth, with more receding hairlines, enlarged noses, and ears protruding out. Oopsie. Accidentally made it appear that Ron Paul's choice of CPAC was being booed when he was actually cheered. Mistakes will happen. And Fox got exposed 6-7 years ago for this, that anybody they don't like, they take the photo, they yellow it, they grow the nose to where it was so ridiculous and so clownish that people called them on it and caught them. And, of course, MSNBC does this. CNN does this. I remember they did a 9/11 hit piece, almost a 2-hour special on History Channel about yours truly a few years ago. And they would show me speaking to a crowd of about 500 in Austin. And then there was an hour lunch recess at the 9/11 event at UT. And they cut from me speaking in the speech to the auditorium during lunch with like 5 people in it. They also did unflattering shots of me with my belly hanging out, you know, from down below. They would take my face and expand the video so it wasn't high def and deform my face and make it look like, you know, I had yellow skin and was about to die of liver failure. This is what they did. And then they would cut to crystal clear, perfect suits with glistening light in high-rise stainless steel office buildings with popular mechanics there, and it would say, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. It would cut experts. And they would cut to the, quote, experts in glistening, perfect video shot with perfect audio. This is what they do. And it's tricks they use, and you should be made aware of it and understand it's an insult against your intelligence when people do things like this. John in Michigan, thanks for holding her on the air.
How you doing, Alex?
Good.
Hey, I had a question, but since you're talking about Fox News and TV fakery, and it's worth looking back over the footage of 9/11 just to see the street interviews that Rick Leventhal did. He would go out, and he was interviewing people off the street, and they'd be talking about bombs, and then all of a sudden, it's too crazy, I'll let you watch it. But the question I had was, since Bruce Ivins made it back into the news this week, I was hoping you could do a quick breakdown of Dr. Philip Zach and the anthrax attacks. I heard you break it all down before in what was sort of like an ambush interview on the John Gibson show, but if you can just bring us up to date and quickly summarize all the...
Well, everything we said, because we interviewed the experts, has now been admitted. The anthrax was the most super weaponized anthrax, and I appreciate your call. I'll try to answer. What was the first question, though, so I get to that, too?
I just made a comment about, like, Fox News and TV fakery, that it's worth just going back and watching the live street interviews with Rick Leventhal on 9/11.
Sure. Let me cover that first, then I'll get into the anthrax. And we've posted and written articles about this at Infowars.com and PrisonPundit.com over the years. You would have real reports with bloodied firemen and police saying there were bombs. They said get out. They blew up 7. Literally hundreds of them. And local newscasts saying they're going to blow up Building 7. The government's going to blow it up. And police get back. They're blowing it up. And we're supposed to ignore all that. Then it falls perfectly in its own footprint. They announce an hour before and then 25 minutes before on CNN and BBC that Building 7 had fallen in its own footprint, and then it hadn't even fallen yet. I mean, it's incredible. That right there, total inside job. But there's all these weird reports on ABC, CBS, you name it, with clean-cut guys wearing baseball caps walking up in the first 30 minutes after the Tower 1 and 2 fell, giving the same script word for word. Well, yes, the towers fell due to fires and the jet fuel, and, of course, then it fell into its own footprint, and it was a total collapse. And they were clearly scripted people, and you can look at them. They're all, you know, have proper posture. They look like, you know, black op military types, and they're there injecting the official story in amongst everybody else running around telling the truth, and firemen going, there was melted metal in there. It had to be bombs. Incredible. Never seen nothing like it. It was as if they were detonators. Boom, 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 popping out. See, those are real people. Firemen going, we got to get out of here. There's got to be more bombs. Any of these buildings could blow up any time. And then Building 7 blows up. Those are real people. Blood coming out their noses, cuts all over them. But then you got clean-cut guys going, oh, let me give you the official story. And then smiling after they say it perfectly, pleased with themselves, scripting it properly. And then FEMA comes out on ABC News, the deputy head of FEMA, Mr. Kennedy, and says, yeah, we were there the night before for a terror drill. And then the media says, is that true? Well, no, I was mistaken now. Giuliani messed up and said, yeah, I was there for a terror drill. Then he says, oh, no, I was mistaken. He tells Congress there was no drill, and then it gets declassified. Tripod 2 of the World Trade Centers and Building 7 being attacked, so they'd move the command center out the night before out to the end of the pier so it'd be safe. I mean, they ran this whole thing. They ran the whole thing right out in front of everybody. And I'm supposed to just go, oh, well, that's politically incorrect to talk about it. Just forget all those videos. Just forget all that. Forget the NORAD standout. Forget bin Laden being CIA. Forget Anwar al-Awlaki being Pentagon. Just forget him getting the underwear bomber on the plane. Forget him protecting Major Hassan. Just forget it all. But to answer your other question, maybe I should shoot a special video in the next few days. Because I don't even want to get into the anthrax case without pulling up all the names, all the specific facts again. It's so big that it's too powerful and too 100% proven that it was an inside job to even cover it without getting all my ducks in a row. But to answer your question, you can go research this all for yourself. They tried to frame 3 different people for it. Then the last guy, Ivans, they grabbed him, they took him to a government facility, and they killed him. And it was buried in 2 newspapers that, by the way, the government had grabbed him when he was throwing fits and threatening to go public, and that he died of a Tylenol overdose in government hands. And when the news said that he'd done it and all this, he never got a trial because they killed him. The reason you have even more evidence of them killing him is that it was not on the news, the nightly news. It was just buried as if it was a footnote that, oh, the government had grabbed him and put him in a mental institution at a government facility because he was saying he didn't do it. And then he conveniently died. So they tried to frame 3 other patsies. They grabbed the 4th guy. They lied and said that the anthrax had been made in a bathtub with a bucket. They said it wasn't weaponized. Then all these university heads came out and said, that's Fort Detrick, Maryland, the most weaponized AIM strain. It takes hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment to make it. No other government on earth can make anthrax this deadly. First, they miniaturize it. I mean, the list goes on. And then it did come out in the news who was known to have broken into the facility, who had the access to it. And we even have that guy's name. So I probably should recap, go back over all my own research, triple check it all, and then do like a 5-minute video breaking it down. And if I have time, I'll do it next week. A national magazine has asked me to do a video and a write-up on top of their feature story coming out in a couple weeks. And so I'm kind of busy doing that right now. And I'm doing RT today. I'm not complaining. I just have a lot of stuff to do. But I tell you what. I'll do an anthrax video for you by next Wednesday, okay? 5-10-minute video breaking it all down. I've just got to go back and, again, get all the dates, all the names, all of it there. The information's all in my brain, but something this big, it's kind of like Oklahoma City. I hate to even get into it without spending 2 hours on it because I don't want to do what the mainstream media does and just say, oh, this is the way it is. I want you to hear it and see it and have it bibliographed so there's no debating. That's the power of this broadcast. Dave, Tim, Scott, Anthony, and others, your calls are straight ahead. A bunch of key economic news as well. Stay with us. The caller was asking about the anthrax case, and I didn't even get to the key point, why it's being brought back up now. Obviously, in the last 3 days, a Washington Post headline, anthrax report casts doubt on scientific evidence in FBI case against Bruce Ivans. Study questions FBI conclusions on anthrax attacks, Washington Examiner. And here's our detailed report. Report vindicates questions in anthrax conspiracy. And this goes through all of the videos and articles we wrote in the last 9 years, breaking down that it was an inside job. So if you want to find it all, here's the article with the video, the audio, the documents. And as you can see, more than 10 bibliographed links in the back of the article where everything we say is documented, and now it's all mainstream news confirming in triplicate everything we said. We actually do research. We actually know what we're talking about. Okay, this is real. We don't just shoot our mouths off here. Okay? So I haven't even covered this week because for me it's old news, which is a blind spot I've got. All this stuff's constantly breaking, vindicating everything we talk about, and I never even really toot my horn and say, listen to us. But they tried to frame 4 different people, so they just went ahead and murdered Ivans. Just like Dr. David Kelly, we told you 8 years ago they murdered him. Now, what is it, almost 90% of Brits believe he was murdered. They've had all these top doctors come out and talk about how he was murdered. Again, they claim he bled to death, but there was no blood with his slit wrist at the site. You don't bleed to death with no blood. They think we're children. He had 2 undissolved caplets in his stomach of a pain pill that wouldn't have killed him. Local police that found him said 5 men in black uniforms ran away from the body. Dr. David Kelly wrote his colleagues saying, now that I've gone public about the lies of WMDs, I will be found dead in the woods, I've been told. And they murdered him and put him in the woods. I mean, that's like Princess Diana made a video and a diary that the government sees but is admittedly real, saying Prince Charles told me that if I marry this Egyptian, that I will be killed in a fake car wreck. And then I go on British radio and TV and they make fun of me and go, Alex claims they killed Diana. This is how dumb they think we are. So I'll do a video on it because the anthrax situation is important, but I'll have to do it next week. Report vindicates questions in anthrax conspiracy. Steve Watson, totally detailed. If you want to go pull this up, just put it in the search engine. Report vindicates questions in anthrax conspiracy. And put prisonplanet.com behind it, and it'll pull up the article for you. And you can get into the National Research Council basically saying the entire official story is a fraud. And the council has found it's impossible that he could have done this on his own. Obviously. I mean, the facilities that make this, there's only one in North America, and that's Fort Detrick. One place to make this. They tried to claim Saddam Hussein did it. Oh, man, I tell you, you know, I'm going to get into some financial news, some border news, some soft kill assassination news coming back. And then I'm going to get to all the callers that are patiently holding. So we're going to get to you, David, Tim, Scott, Anthony, Chuck, and others. But that's why I love callers, because they always bring up incredibly central points that need to be covered. But if you want to see me really professionally lay out all these issues, if you want to see every major topic covered, it's my films. They're award-winning. They're available on DVD with the expanded extras and the highest quality on the online video bookstore shopping cart at Infowars.com, and all the other amazing books and videos and materials that we carry, the best stuff out there at the best prices, and your purchase of the T-shirts, the ball caps, the V for Victory, we will be victorious, T-shirts at Infowars.com, the Draft Ron Paul shirts, all of those items spread the word, wake people up, get the word out, but it also symbiotically supports this transmission. So I hope you get the other videos we carry, like What in the World Are They Spraying? Or Enemy of the State, or Obama Deception, Fall of the Republic, Invisible Empire. It's such an excellent film that I produced and Jason Burmis directed. It's available, discounted, at Infowars.com. But think about us and remember that we can continue to grow and expand and be strong in the face of the globalist onslaught when you purchase the books, the videos, the materials at Infowars.com, at PrisonPlanet.tv. You can also see all the films and expanded extras that aren't even in the DVDs. My book, Paul Watson's book, the live video stream, the archive video stream, a bunch of other films we've been authorized to post, special interviews only at PrisonPlanet.tv, 15 cents a day. You can get 3 months free when you sign up for a full year. Get a trial, $5.95 monthly subscription to PrisonPlanet.tv. By supporting the tip of the spear in the alternative media, you supercharge. You help us turn on our afterburners as we expand this operation against the New World Order as a platform to launch more resistance. The federal government is seizing tens of thousands of websites a week, and they seized 84,000 last week with no evidence, no nothing. They now admit there was no child porn on the 84,000 dog grooming websites, real estate company websites, you name it. Restaurant websites, your customers go there to order a pizza or to call to get some landscaping done, and it says you're a child pornographer. They're beta testing the takeover of the web and the kill switches and admitting that that's their plan. We have got to use the internet while we still have it. We've got to do two things: defend the web and keep it free and open, but at the same time recognize they're incrementally clamping down on it. 3 weeks ago, Google came out and said we're going to start blocking and shutting down alternative media websites where they're non-searchable, like the Drudge Report and Infowars.com. They said if you're a content farm, meaning links and blurbs and comments on things, we're actually have a lot of original stuff, obviously, but the point is that they're going to start blocking. Well, they announce it after they're already doing it. They're already blocking us. Government paid for broadband in Europe and universities and military bases in many areas in the U.S. for years have been blocking Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Karl Rove's saying we've got to run Ron Paul out of the Republican Party? These birthers, these anti-Federal Reserve people are dangerous because they work for them just like the Democrats. The Republicans and the Democrats engineered the end of Glass-Steagall in '99. They engineered the banker takeover in October 2008. And all the subsequent things we've seen where even Dianne Feinstein admitted they were getting 1,000-to-1 phone calls against the banker bailout. And what did then Secretary of Treasury Paulson do? He went into a closed session, into closed meetings in House and Senate, and said there will be martial law if you don't do what you're told. Now, what has the governor of Wisconsin said, regardless of where you stand on this union busting? What has he said? What has he come out and said? He has come out in front of everyone and in their face said, I'll use the National Guard on you if you don't like it. This whole police state grid is for the American people as they begin to take the pension funds, as they begin to increase the taxes, as they begin to cut spending. Look, I don't like the big ballooned, bloated government. I don't like the out-of-control unions in some cases. The unions were sold out to the globalists in NAFTA and GATT by 1994. But it is somewhat of a counterbalance to the big mega corporations, so it's being broken up. And that's what Obama was a union buster liberal in Chicago. So he plays the part of the savior while the Republicans play the part of the bad guys for unions as they try to bust them up. But if we're going to have $28 trillion and counting given to offshore secretive banks, a few $100 billion via the unions, and now they're announcing we're going to cut your pay and make you pay more into your pension fund, which you'll never get. They've already taken the military's pension funds. I get emails all the time. Well, Alex, how are you saying that $2.1 trillion was stolen by 2001? Well, because the Associated Press reported it and it was admitted. $2.1 trillion missing from the Pentagon. Just search it. You'll get AP. It was admitted. The last time we saw a congressional hearing on it in 2006, the last time it was brought up, it was over $4 trillion missing. People say, well, the defense budget's only $1 trillion on budget. Close to another $1 trillion off budget if you count intelligence. How are they stealing $1 trillion or more a year? Because there were all those giant funds for the VA and for the pension funds and the death benefits. And what did Bloomberg report last year? And I keep going back to this because it's so big. VA headline, signed secret deal with major insurance companies to withhold death benefits. They take that money out of your little military check for the 10 years, the 20 years, the 25 years, the 3 years, whatever the case is. You're in the military. And then you die in combat or you die of a heart attack when you're 65, whatever it is, and your widow or widower goes to get the money, and they're told, sorry, you don't get jack diddly squat. They stole the pension funds already. They stole the Social Security already. They stole most of the private pension funds already. And they're saying, oh, they're in trouble. They're underfunded. 48 states are about to go bankrupt or are already technically insolvent. The answer is pay us more taxes. We'll take over your pension funds. Congress says they'll take over the states in receivership. The federal government itself in receivership to the private Federal Reserve, the second biggest owner of the fraudulent debt after the communist Chinese. We've been positioned into this situation, and I'm just a normal guy who studied it, stating public facts. Who are the terrorists? Are they the men in caves that are protected and left alone? Or are they the big banks who've already stolen the military's death benefits? All these people that wrap themselves in the flag and, oh, support the troops. That means feed them into a meat grinder. Support them by not caring about them. I actually care. Remember Obama, a year and a half ago, we had the head of the Veterans of Foreign Wars on, VFW? It was in the news. Obama got him in a meeting and said, we want to go ahead and not pay for people at the VA anymore. We want to now make them go out and buy their own insurance. Remember that? Folks, the military signed a contract. The military, they take taxpayer money and put it in the VA funds. There's plenty of money. But they give them horrible care because they're stealing it out the back door. Now, others would say, be patriotic, sit down and shut up. No, I will not sit down. I will not shut up. So the way they're phrasing this now, by making it a left-right issue, is that as the teachers have their funds slashed, and sure, there's corruption there. But as as their pension funds get taken, part or all, they'll say, oh, that's what bankrupted the government. That was the problem. You could get rid of all the pension funds, public and private. You could get rid of all the government spending. The debt is so huge, most of it fraudulent. They've now tied us to the bankers' debt, their 1.5 quadrillion in derivatives, that they're saying, give us all the money, give us unlimited new taxes, or we will implode the economy, as they're already incrementally imploding the economy. As they held the nation hostage back in October of 2008, saying we will fully destroy the stock market if you don't do it, and Congress didn't pass the bill, so they had the head of the Federal Reserve, the head of the Treasury, all the private bankers go out on TV and say we're going into a depression. That killed confidence, and there was a 1,000-point stock market plunge, and then the Congress, under financial terrorism with a financial gun to their head, ran back and said, we'll do whatever you say. Okay, you're the boss. I mean, I wanted to recap that. So just like they first in Europe started banning free speech 30 years ago or so by saying white supremacists shouldn't have free speech, and the average politically correct person said, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Now if you criticize the EU, they try to arrest you. Now if you criticize Muslims calling for a Muslim Europe, you get arrested or hauled into court. See, once you get rid of free speech for one group, everybody loses it. And it's the same exact paradigm, the same exact system. Now with this, look at these lazy teachers. Look at these bad people. You know, they're getting their pay cut. They deserve it. We've got to fix America. Why, look at the New Jersey governor. Look at the Wisconsin governor. They're getting tough. And it sets that precedent to now frame it that it's the unions that did all of this. No, the unions were the domestication of the population. The unions were getting people addicted to government control. It's a small part of the equation. And so it's now this smokescreen to why our economy's imploding, to why the taxes are going up. And so they play it off against people to then cut all the benefits, which are bad enough because we're domesticated and made dependent by them. But then if you cut those, that's the little bit of government money as they devalue the dollar, at least flowing in to the mom and pop shops. Bob Chapman's with us for the entire hour. I like to sometimes have another guest pop in with Bob because his knowledge is so wide, similar to the wide spectrum analysis that I engage in. So he's with us for 30 minutes alone, take a few calls, and then Jesse Trentadue, the lawyer who continues to sue and get internal documents concerning the inside job that was the OKC bombing in '95. He's going to be joining us with Bob coming up in 30 minutes. But Bob, so much happening, so much developing. Ben Ali, the former dictator of Tunisia, had a convenient stroke, just like Hosni Mubarak now. How obvious is that getting? We've got also China, now WikiLeaks confirming, basically ordering the SEC around on their internal deals in the U.S. Is that not espionage by the SEC with a foreign power, with China through the U.S. government controlling mergers and deals? I mean that's a foreign power. That's what globalism is, I guess, running our country.
Well, at least in part, and at least that part, because of their almost $900 billion in mostly in treasuries and agencies. The agencies bonds are Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, and FHA bonds. They have been continually reducing their position. They reduced it last month by $4 billion, and they continue to peck away at it. The exchanges that they've made with Greece and Spain and Portugal for loans have involved the sale of the U.S. paper. They are sticking their nose in everywhere that they can because they think they have a hammer, and they really do. the best thing for the U.S. government to do is say, look, enough. You run your country, we'll run ours, and if you don't like it, we'll just devalue the currency and default on our debt. How would you like that?
Well,
so I think that's something they should think about. I hadn't heard too much about that, but that's going on all the time behind the scenes. They're pushing and pushing and pushing, and at the same time, they continue to buy dollars with yuan as it's pronounced, that they create out of thin air, just like the Fed does, and they continue to purchase those dollars so they can buy treasuries so they can keep the value of their currency down. And really the secret is that sooner or later they're going to have to stop doing that. They're going to have to let their currency float to where it should be, upward. And that means less exports to the United States. The exports to the United States will be more expensive. It also means that they'll have less inflation in China because the dollars that are coming into China are causing inflation. And then they have their own internal problems as well, which are very, very serious. Every bit as bad as what the problems that America has. And that varies from province to province. Some of them are doing fine and some of them are upside down.
And we're also seeing riots in Mexico, riots in Saudi Arabia, Yemen. I mean, this is popping up everywhere, obviously driven by dollar devaluation that's triggering more commodity increases in prices, which is putting pressure on poor people.
Well, we discussed it 3 weeks ago, and you and I both agreed that this is what was going to happen. And that is what has happened. And we were even seeing it in Wisconsin and Ohio. And we're going to continue to see it over the next several years.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought, Bob. I want to come back to you. We may have to reconnect to you. Your phone line's usually awesome. It's breaking up a bit. So we'll reconnect with Bob Chapman. We're going to come right back with him and continue. That's right. He did lay all this out 3 weeks ago. He laid it out 5 years ago. But he laid it all out 3 weeks ago that you'd have this Egypt effect. We're going to come back and break all this down. Then we're going to take some of your phone calls and get into what's happening with gold and silver. MSNBC is reporting that Egypt has okayed Iranian warships through the Suez Canal. Israel calls it a provocation. Canal officials said only war could have blocked request. And Israel said in the last 3 days that they are considering a military strike on Iranian gunboats, really small, inconsequential vessels. I guess they're not allowed to traverse the international canal and go into the Mediterranean, though everybody else is. Again, who's really starting the provocation here? Why is Iran doing this? Are they hoping Israel's so brazen they attack them? It'll be some type of political score points for Iran. There's a reason the commodities are going up. It's not just that the dollar's being devalued. It also factors into the Middle East tension. Now, Bob, going back years ago, I predicted it, you predicted it, Gerald Salente, countless others, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. It doesn't take a brain surgeon or a quantum mechanics physicist to know that the dollar is the world reserve currency worldwide. The dollar is devaluing faster outside the country than it is inside the country, and that's normally how these inflation situations work. And that if you got half the people in Egypt and more than half in some of these other countries, it varies on $2 a day or less, that if their heating oil, their gasoline, their rice, their wheat, their corn prices go up exponentially with this big food bubble driven by dollar devaluation, that they're going to get angry. People then say, well, Alex, are you saying that the globalists triggered these rebellions, or are you saying that they're real? No, there's real dictators and really angry people, and the globalists have set up the IMF World Bank policies on top of it, ordering food rations cut as they go up, and then they know people are about to revolt, tracking the Twitter and the Google. They go in, because Google admits they can predict future trends almost 100% in mass groups with this, the herd mentality, then they come in and trigger it with their people to try to control the direction it goes. Bob Chapman, is that an accurate boil down?
Certainly is. And, you know, we hear so much about HARP, and we don't know exactly what it's doing. So the United States government and others as well, there are other versions. And so you see floods in Australia that happen, every 100 years. And now we've got a drought in 2 sections of China. We have over ample rain in Argentina. And so you put these things together, and then you get this flight to quality that's being caused by people leaving currencies, but particularly the dollar, buying commodities, and particularly gold and silver. Now, today is a good example, and yesterday, of market rigging. The government, through Morgan, pushed down the gold stocks yesterday, and then today they raised margin requirements on gold and silver again, because people who buy commodities and gold and silver, they don't put all the money down. They'll borrow a certain amount of money. It could be 80%. And so when the margin requirement is raised, they pay more interest. And that tends to mute or neutralize the upward movement of gold and silver and anything else that they do it to. They also did it to platinum and palladium. And they do this all the time in order to rig the market. And at the same time, Morgan is asking their cash clients in their cash accounts, if they've got any of these gold stocks, can we borrow them? Because we want to go short and knock them down. Well, anybody who would lend their stocks to them would have to be out of their mind, because they'd be knocking their own stock down. But this shows you how crooked and how desperate these people are. And this sort of thing goes on all the time.
But, Bob, here's the bottom line. There are congressional investigations kicking in, dealing with big banks manipulating silver and gold. If you look at the overall 10, 11-year graph, gold, silver is only going straight up. So is every other major commodity. And it's a losing battle. They're able to push it down to have a psychological effect, but it always retraces the old gains and goes to new highs. And now we see China and others accelerating their purchasing to record levels. I see a major breakout coming in the near future. What do you see?
It already happened today. A clean breakout for silver on a technical basis. Next stop, 37, 38, maybe higher. And that's going to take gold right along with it. And what I told you happened about an hour and a half ago on the margin requirements. The silver and gold came off. It's going right back up again. And you're right, it's a very temporary thing. These are desperate people doing desperate things. You've got the Fed doing things that they know will be unsuccessful, but they don't know what else to do. They're in a box they can't get out.
Amazing. Bob, your phone, again, normally is great. It's breaking up a little bit, but the information is so powerful. We'll try to reconnect during the next break. But there's a lot of other things happening in the world. How obvious does it have to get now that Ben Ali, the former Tunisian dictator thrown out a month ago, ran to Saudi Arabia and had a magical stroke, the same way that Mubarak ran to Israel, then back to Egypt and had a stroke? I mean, this is getting really ridiculous.
Well, I think in Mubarak's case, it might be believable. And age-wise, it's not believable for the gentleman who fled Tunisia. But if you've read about his wife, there's validity to it. I mean, she was the one that snatched the gold.
Yeah, but it's starting to get a little obvious here. When Mubarak says, I'm not going to step down for a few months, and the U.S. says, yes, you will, then magically he disappears. We never see him again, and here he has a stroke, and he does step down. And now this guy runs off and has a stroke. I mean, come on.
No, it's all phony. I just thought I'd made light of it, considering Mubarak's age.
But what's this new thing where they just have a stroke because it's too obvious when they just kill them?
Yeah, it could be. Could very well be. We're just going to give you one stroke, and you don't have to have any more.
Amazing. Bob, I want to go to some phone calls for you. They'll be all over the map, but I know you can certainly answer them. But before we go any further, you were getting into these rebellions spreading worldwide now in multiple states in the U.S. and Mexico, all over the Middle East. You predicted that. Where do you see it going now?
I think it will slowly go forward in different places. Places will take longer than others. Some places you're going to have violence right away, like you just saw in Bahrain, and which is the newest one. And in Wisconsin and Ohio, you had no violence. Violence is born usually of extraordinary frustration, or it's a commercial issue, which is like food costs too much and I can't afford it, or I'm going to lose my job permanently. What am I going to do? And those are the kind of things, they're belly items, we'll call them. They get right down to the nitty-gritty of survival. And I think that's what's going to kick the U.S. forward. But there are other nations that have more of those kinds of problems. They have more poor people, and they don't have extended unemployment, and they also do not have food stamps. I mean, go to Mexico, they don't have those things. And so the chances for insurrection are far greater in other countries.
Why are the globalists in closing, and we'll go to calls, so arrogant, Bob? You've got the big mega banks making record profits, consolidating the entire economy, engaging in crime, won't say where tens of trillions of dollars have gone, overtaking nations, getting nations they've bought off to sign on to their banker debt. The case of Ireland's a great new example where it's admitted the people don't own it, but the government says, hey, we're signing you on to this debt. I mean, how far can they go as they become fat as pigs in front of everybody and as everybody else starts losing their job or getting their pay cut?
Well, what I think will happen is the demonstrations and the riots will come to every country. And I've said this over and over, nobody's going to be immune. It'll be better in some places than others. And the next step after that is revolution. And I expect half the countries in the world are going to have revolution, and I'll tell you why. Because of your program and programs like that go all over the world and the Internet. We are reaching millions of people out there. In fact, the foreigners to us are far more interested in what we've got to say than our fellow American citizens. I can't believe it. And that's borne out by the letters that I get, many of which I run on the Forecaster, from foreigners, as well as the number of people who are subscribing from foreign countries is very high.
Yes, a lot of the world is more advanced into tyranny, so they know how right we are historically. But we're going to break. We're going to come back and talk to Tim, Anthony, James, Dana, Tom, and a few others ahead of Jesse Trentadue joining us. Bob will ride shotgun. But I forgot to mention this coming out of the last break. My IT guys have 100% confirmed that we are under a massive denial of service attack at Infowars.com right now. But luckily, we've got a lot of big CDNs and giant servers, and we're pretty much under routine attack from this and other systems. So remember, folks don't want you seeing Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. They don't want you getting this information. How do you counter that? You spread the word about Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com and this radio show. You take the video stream, the audio streams from the show. You link them to your friends and family. We reach new people. You don't even have to talk yourself blue in the face. Direct them to this broadcast and all the amazing guests and the information we cover here. But know this, I've had to hire more IT people. I've got a full-time sit on top of this, but it only makes us stronger. As Nietzsche said, that which does not kill us only makes us stronger. And we are becoming stronger. You know, they say that pain is weakness leaving the body, and that's certainly happening in our operation. It was hack attacks years ago because I could only have individual servers that made me start more websites so that when they hacked one that was down for a while, it'd have another. Turns out that's now the industry leader for folks to start more websites and roll them out and make them all big. They call it a synergy. I didn't know that. Their attacks is the reason you have PrisonPlanet.com and all our other sites. I mean, so as God says, no weapon formed against us will prosper. All right, let's take a few phone calls for Bob Chapman ahead of bombshell info on Oklahoma City. I know Bob will have comments on that with us. Tim in Michigan, you're on the air worldwide.
Hey, Mr. Jones, how you doing today? This is Cracker Tim from the big Detroit city.
Okay, buddy, what's on your mind?
Hey, well, first off, this isn't this isn't exactly the points that I was going to talk about, but they kind of just jumped out from some of the stuff that you said. So I just something you can research on your own. You were talking about, how the veterans were being treated. And on the front page of the Macomb Daily, which is the county paper here, you can get it at MacombDaily.com. It says, wounded vets still waiting for benefits. Red tape could mean fewer families are eligible. And then we got a new pandemic. Did you hear about this? It's called whooping cough, or they call it pertussis. And now all of a sudden, there's this huge article on the health page.
Yeah, but I mean, you'll notice it's not even that many cases, and a lot of times they point out it's kids that were vaccinated, so it means it wasn't even protecting them, but they've got this big push going to vaccinate people. Tim, I appreciate your call. Bob, on the front of the fact that they've already stolen the veterans' benefits out the back door, that's why they're moving now to try to block as many of their benefits as they can.
That's correct, and they also cheated them on their life insurance policies. And it's abominable what they've done. I'm a veteran, and I do a veteran show, I have for about 5.5 years, and they're active members as well. And it just, you have no idea. It just drives me crazy when I hear this stuff. And I'm very, very disappointed that our government has done that.
Well, that lets us know it's not our government when they sign a secret deal 11 years ago to steal the death benefits of vets that have paid for it. I mean, these are, criminal isn't the word. This is a illegitimate group of scumbag robbers that runs things. I mean, we're in deep trouble here, folks. If they'll rob the vets' death benefits, and they've got the veterans organizations paid off standing down, what else will they do? What else are they doing we don't know about?
They'll do anything.
They'll do anything. Let's talk to Anthony in Arizona. Anthony, you're on the air with Bob Chapman.
Hello, Alex.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, what's going on? I'm calling from Yuma, Arizona, actually, Marine Corps Air Station, Yuma. Yes, I'm a Marine, if you want to do a little research on that. I would actually want to talk about the Federal Reserve System and their money market system.
Okay, go ahead. You're on the air with Bob Chapman.
Okay, now, with the money market system and the Federal Reserve System, our money is pretty much worthless. Is that agreeable?
I agree with you.
All right, now, under Article 1, Section 10, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters, and et cetera. And one point says, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts.
Yes, it's unconstitutional and illegal. The whole Federal Reserve System is alien to our republic.
Okay, so what if a Marine were to, let's say, sue the government saying that his contracts were in fact illegal from the get-go?
Well, Bob, what do you think will happen with that?
Well, I think, first of all, you've got to talk to an attorney who might specialize close to that area. I certainly can't answer that. That's dangerous for yourself. And I've been there, and so I know the rules that you have to operate under as a military person. And so I would get expert legal advice before I tried anything like that.
I see. All right, well.
You see, I don't know whether you've had him on, Alex, but the captain who refused to take an order because he said the president wasn't an American citizen and he couldn't be president. And so they threw him in jail and they're going to court-martial him. So you've got to be on pretty solid ground before you do anything to challenge.
Absolutely. Anthony, thank you for the call. Interesting points. In closing for this segment, we're going to come back and get into some really incredible new information on the Oklahoma City front with Jesse Trentadue. Bob Chapman will ride shotgun with us as we examine these important new developments, proving that criminal elements in the government are involved in many of these terrorist attacks. I wanted to just mention that Catherine Albrecht, Genesis talk show host, really nice lady, was diagnosed with breast cancer and is going to be having surgery next week. So we all want to pray for Catherine Albrecht, the lady, of course, exposes RFID and the whole cashless society tracking enslavement grid. So pray for Catherine Albrecht, folks. She's a great lady. And we wish her a speedy and healthy recovery. She's asked me to fill in some for her next week. I don't know if I can do it. I got so much going on, but I'll probably do 1 or 2 shows for her, but she's going to be gone for a few weeks. Okay, we're going to come back with Bob Chapman and Jesse Trentadue on the other side. Keep it locked in. Call your friends and family. They need to hear this. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the sites, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
Okay, I want to go over some of the background, but first I want to get into the new developments with Jesse Trentadue, a former law professor with 30 years experience and trial lawyer practicing primarily in the arena of insurance defense with cases involving personal injury, property damage, civil rights, breach of contract. His brother was tortured and murdered by the FBI. That began to get him to investigate the OKC bombing case, and he has sued in court over and over again to get secret FBI and other government documents. And he's been able to discover and confirm that Elohim City was a government operation with the Southern Poverty Law Center. We've interviewed the former head of HUD, Jane Graham, who was in the building and saw McVeigh and others planting gray sticks of butter with wires, saying they were a telephone company the day before. I mean, it just, the witnesses go on and on. Terrence Yakey, cop of the year that saved all these people. The ATF showed up and said, you know, bandage us up to a doctor in front of him, and they weren't even in the building and lied about it. The list goes on and on. You have high-level FBI agents, and I'll get into that coming up, who said they were in Dallas, but turned out were in Oklahoma City the day before. You've got now sworn affidavits by people involved, like Terry Nichols saying, yes, McVeigh was a government agent. I mean, all of this is happening, but now there's a new report out here, thanks to Trentadue's research and lawsuits, discovering that, indeed, there was a call made to the Alfred P. Murrah building saying don't be there in the days before. And that's why a lot of people weren't in the building that day, like the ATF. And Bob Chapman, an expert, obviously researching this case, riding with a shotgun today. He'll also have some questions or comments. But Jesse Trentadue, kind of recap the saga and the big bombshells, and then let's get into the new one.
Well, I think it all, first of all, Mr. Jones, thank you for having me on again.
You bet.
And it started with the murder of my brother. My brother was picked up for a so-called parole violation in Southern California, sent immediately to Oklahoma City. 2 days later, the federal government said he committed suicide, and they tried to have his body cremated. We fought very hard to get his body returned to us. His throat was cut. They said he'd hanged himself. His throat was cut. His head was smashed open to 3 places. He'd been beaten head to toe, front to back. Even the soles of his feet had been beaten. We never had a motive for why they killed him. And then shortly before he was executed, I get a message from Tim McVeigh that said, when I saw your brother's picture and heard what happened to him, I wanted you to know that he was killed by the FBI. They mistook him for Richard Lee Guthrie. And Guthrie was the person I believe is John Doe 2. Guthrie, about a year after my brother's murder, ended up supposedly hanging himself while in the custody of the FBI. And we had a witness to my brother's murder, and a month before we went to trial, they found him hanging in his cell while under federal custody. But to cut to the core of it, that apparently my brother matched Richard Lee Guthrie in the description that the FBI was circulating for John Doe 2. It was a white male, 5'9", powerful upper body build, dark complected, believed to be in Canada or Mexico, driving 1986 Chevrolet pickup truck, and a dragon tattoo on his left forearm. My brother came, that was a perfect match for my brother. He was coming back across the border in San Diego, been down into Mexico. He was driving his friend's 1986 Chevrolet pickup truck. He was 5'9", powerful upper body build, dark complected, dragon tattoo left forearm. Stopped, arrested, sent to Oklahoma, and dead 2 days later. once I knew that, I started to try to find some link between Guthrie, it even looked like my brother, and the Oklahoma City bombing. And I didn't start out to solve the Oklahoma City bombing. I started out to find out who killed my brother and why. But everything I did took me to Oklahoma City and the bombing. And fortunately that I've been able to...
do me a favor, Jesse. Talk right into your telephone for us.
I am, yes.
Yeah, just speak up for us because some of it's trailing off. Please continue.
Well, I started to sue the government under the Freedom of Information Act to get records. And among the first records I got were a series of teletypes from FBI Director Louis Freeh to FBI offices in Oklahoma and around certain locations around the country, talking about McVeigh had called Elohim City 2 days before the bombing and had asked for more help. And an informant had intercepted that call and warned the FBI and advised the FBI. I had documents that showed that a government informant had actually gone to Oklahoma City with McVeigh and scouted the target 4 months before the bombing. And I sued for records involving the CIA. And the CIA shouldn't be involved in the Oklahoma City bombing case because it is a foreign intelligence service, and it's illegal for it to be operating in the United States. And for the first time, they came back, and the CIA claimed national security. They said it would be a grave threat to the national security of the United States if they released the records. And that's one of the exemptions the government has, that they don't have to turn over anything, is if it would jeopardize national security. But I'm thinking, what in the world is the CIA doing looking at this white supremacist camp in Oklahoma City?
All right, now let's go through some of what you've discovered since then. It's been confirmed, even major newspapers like the LA Times have reported that more than 14 videotapes from different buildings were all confiscated. When people sued to get them, yourself included, they claim that all the tapes were being changed at the same time at the YMCA, at banks, savings and loans. I mean, if you believe that, I got a bridge I'll sell you. Also, former FBI Task Force Director Danny Coulson had claimed he was in Dallas on April 19th, 95 and flew up there, but there was no record of that. Then we have the hotel receipt of him at the Marriott the day before being in Oklahoma City. You add that to the fray. You've got all these documents you've sued and gotten. As best you can tell from your research and this new information you're about to cover, what really happened at Oklahoma City?
Well, I think it's now apparent that it was some kind of government operation. Whether McVeigh was actually working for the government originally and then went rogue on them, or whether it was planned all along, I don't know. But the FBI had at least 4 or 5 informants involved with this operation. They knew in advance it was going to happen. And once it happened, they did everything in the world they could to cover it up. I'm trying to think of some of the more crucial things that have involved.
I mean, there's just so much evidence. It's totally ridiculous. And now we see all these Obama advisors saying they need another Oklahoma City because it'll help Obama like it did Clinton. And even Glenn Beck has come out and said he believes they're preparing a new Oklahoma City to be blamed on the Liberty Movement. Were you aware of him saying that 2 months ago?
I was not aware of that, but I want to go back. You mentioned a very important thing. I sued to get the surveillance tapes from around on the Murrow building. The surveillance cameras actually on a building that was destroyed, and the surveillance cameras tapes from the roads leading up to the building. I get all the tapes except the one for the Murrow building, but the tapes they give me go blank at various times between 8:54 and 9:02 when the bomb went off. So I have 6 or 7 different buildings where when a vehicle would be passing, specifically the bomb truck with the Ryder truck, the tape goes blank. And further up the road, a little later, that tape goes blank. So in essence, 26 tapes that I received go blank at various times between 8:54 and 9:02 on April 19th, 1995. And the government of the United States says, well, that's because the tapes were being changed.
So it's savings and loans and YMCAs and businesses everywhere. They're magically being changed in that 2-minute period.
That's basically what they said. But more importantly, they don't give me the tapes from the Murrah building. And I had been leaked the Secret Service timeline that said surveillance cameras showed the bomb detonating 3 minutes and 6 seconds after the suspects exited the vehicle. Now, that was the Murrah building camera tapes. I've sued to get those. No one has ever seen those outside of the FBI, to my knowledge.
And an FBI agent told the Washington Times and L.A. Times he's seen them, and it shows McVeigh with other people.
Yes. And the government, the FBI specifically, says they can't find them. Now, the most important evidence, you would think, that would have been Exhibit 1 in the prosecution of Tim McVeigh, a tape showing him coming up to driving the truck up to the building, setting the timer, getting out of the truck, walking away, and the bomb going off. They didn't use that tape. And the reason they didn't use it is because it has other people getting out of that truck, one or more of whom was probably an informant.
Which is what all the witnesses said anyways, but they're telling us to forget about that. I want to get into the new information here in a moment, but I wanted to bring Bob Chapman in, who's followed this closely, guest hosting with us in this hour. Bob, what's your comments on what you're hearing? Any questions for Jesse Trentadue?
I think it's pretty cut and dried what they've done. And it's been my opinion that the thing was set up by the United States government, and McVeigh was a key member working with the government on this project. I would parallel it with 9/11.
And they burned him. They burned their own guy like they always do, like Lee Harvey Oswald.
That's right. And it's just like when the governments take over from another government, the first thing they do is get rid of the people who put them into power because they're too dangerous. But it's pretty obvious now from what this gentleman is telling us and what we know from before that the United States government did perform this operation. And sooner or later, just like 9/11, everything will come out. And hopefully these people think that they'll outlast it, and they'll die before it's discovered in total of what they've done.
Just like Northwoods, just like Tonkin, just like Operation Ajax or Operation Gladio. If our criminal government would blow up school buses and trains in Italy in 1981 to blame their political enemies, would they do it here? I mean, that's a no-brainer, and they've been caught with their pants down. Now, the new stuff you've gotten in the last few years via lawsuits is depositions with Terry Nichols, confirming what others said. McVeigh was a government agent. He's videotaped at a base a year after he's out of the military, at a demolitions base. You've got the Ryder truck being loaded at Camp Grouper. You've got the Southern Poverty Law Center FBI running Elohim City, the command base. And you've got where you've sued and gotten different documents where they black it out. Then you're able to get it the same document, other areas blacked out, put it together. But tell folks about the new information dealing with the phone call warning that all the witnesses reported on hearing about. That's why the building was more than half empty, but it wasn't empty at that daycare center. They made sure they picked something so we could see some bloody dead kids on TV so they could demonize the states' rights movement.
Well, what happened is I sued the FBI to get, or under the Freedom of Information Act request, records of the evidence found in Terry Nichols' home in Kansas. In about 2005, the FBI went to the former home of Terry Nichols in Harrington, Kansas, went into the basement in a crawl space, and found a box of explosives. And I wanted those box of explosives because I had interviewed Nichols, and he told me the information about those explosives, that the fingerprints of the FBI informant who gave Nichols and McVeigh the detonators for the bomb.
Speak up. I'm sorry. Speak up, sir. This is too important.
Nichols had told me during an interview, private interview, that on that box of explosives would be the fingerprints of the FBI informant who gave him the detonators. And this box contained some more detonators that were used, part of which were used in the bomb. Nichols had originally tried to get this information out through Homeland Security because he wanted Homeland Security to do the fingerprint check and announce the names of the people's prints found on that box. The FBI found out about it and raided the home and got the box. But before they did that, back when McVeigh was standing trial in Oklahoma City for murder, an FBI I guess, agent or operative, for lack of a better word, approached Nichols and his defense team and said, "We will promise you will not be executed if you will agree to three things." And Nichols says, "Well, how can you guarantee that I won't be convicted and executed?" And they said, "We will not cooperate with the state of Oklahoma. We will not give them witnesses. We will not give them evidence. Then they won't be able to prosecute you." Nichols says, "What do I have to do?" The first thing they said to him is, "You have to take credit for a phone call that was made to us the day before the bombing, warning about the bombing." And Nichols told me, he said, "I never made that call. I didn't even know about that call. And I told him I didn't." Now, what that tells me is there's a record of a phone call to the FBI warning them about the bombing, probably from one of their informants with McVeigh. And they can't get rid of that record. So they needed to establish someone to take responsibility for it. Nichols says, "What's the second thing?" And they said, "Well, we want you to implicate your brother in the bombing." And Nichols says, "I won't do that because he wasn't involved." Nichols says, "What's the third thing?" And they said, "Where is the box of explosives you took from the home of Roger Moore in Arkansas?" And no one would have known about that box of explosives other than being buried in that crawl space, or the fact that it existed, other than Nichols and an FBI informant who was aware of it. And Nichols thought they wanted evidence against Roger Moore, and this is what he has told me that's in the court records. And he said, "Well, I'll give you Mr. Moore." And they said, "No, that's not what we want. We want that box of explosives." And what these documents I received confirm is that meeting took place. Those offers were made. The FBI later learns of the existence of that box of explosives in Nichols' former home, gets there ahead of Homeland Security and other law enforcement, takes the box, destroys the blasting caps and detonators so that they couldn't be anyway linked to what may have been used in the bombing. But they do fingerprint analysis of the box. And it turns out that McVeigh's prints are on the box, Nichols' prints are on the box, and fingerprints from two other individuals they will not identify were on the box of explosives.
And McVeigh told, and he fits the MO of this, Nichols and others in sworn affidavits now, that he was part of a black op team basically infiltrating militias, counterterrorism, but then it shifted to they were going to do some type of drill bomb or test, and then they just basically went and then set McVeigh up, which is what they classically do, correct?
It has all the earmarks of having been a government operation, or it's not an operation, that's certainly one they knew about and were on top of it almost from the beginning.
And then months later, Terrence Yakey, Cop of the Year, is being followed, calls his partner, says, "I've been followed by the FBI." Then he's found in a field, tortured to death. And of course, I mean, this is who you work for, government. This is what America is. Cop killing scum. We'll be right back. They want your pension funds. Yeah, if you believe that McVeigh and Terry Nichols carried out that bombing, I got some oceanfront property in Arizona, and from my front porch,
if you leave me,
you can see the sea.
I won't miss you, and I won't ever take you back. Girl, your memory.
We'll be back live this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Bob Chapman of the InternationalForecaster.com's our guest. Jesse Trentadue, a lawyer whose brother was brutally tortured and murdered by the FBI in custody in his jail cell, joins us. Bob, you've been hearing this new incredible information, and there it is hanging out in plain view. I mean, if we don't expose these government-sponsored terror events, they're going to continue to stage them, aren't they?
They certainly are, and whether we deter them remains to be seen. It's reflected in what you talk about and I talk about as far as the arrogance and the transparency of all of the things that they're doing all of the time, ranging from Wall Street to black op events. And I think that, the history of the OSS and then the CIA, and in these latter years in the FBI, latter years being perhaps since 1970, the whole spectrum of agencies within government has changed tremendously. I think Iran-Contra taught us that. And, everybody gets away with everything. And the people who have to be eliminated, and the public doesn't want to know.
So why not take all the veterans' death benefits? Why not steal the pensions? Why not bankrupt the country? Why not have the TSA stick their hands down our pants? Why not have telescreens saying spy on your neighbor? I mean, once you give in to evil, we've had 51 million abortions. Why not have 100 million? It's just sky's the limit, folks. None of us are safe. None of our children, nothing. This must be met head on. Jesse Trentadue, in closing, any other key points you want to add about the investigation, where all this is going, and justice for your murdered brother and the other 160-plus people they slaughtered at Oklahoma City?
This question, and it has troubled me all this time. Clearly the government knew. Clearly the government was involved. I don't know whether they intended to stop it and it got away, or they planned it. And I don't know. But they knew it was going to happen. They assisted. I don't know if the plan was to stop it with cameras running and become heroes and regain some respect from the American people, or if they actually intended to kill them.
Well, we know they killed your brother and Terrence Yakey and a bunch of other medical people that saw the truth. I mean, we know that, I mean, there's no doubt they carried the whole stinking thing out to blame it on the American people. It wasn't to be heroes.
Well, they certainly killed the people after the fact to cover it up. But before the fact, they were responsible, whether they intended it or not.
Yeah, well, we just got to belly up here to these people and just say, here we are, we want our country back, and, we want this New World Order to stop, and we're not afraid, we're committed, we're V2, that term for pilots. Point of no return, when there's not enough runway to stop, they got to try to take off. We're all V2, America, and the rest of the world. We got to go all the way. What do you say to that, Jesse Trentadue?
Oh, we can't drop this one. This is too important. We'll never have a country if they get away with this, because they'll just encourage them to do more.
Well, hey, we're getting further every day, and in the court of public opinion, people now know about false flag terror. And gentlemen, God bless you both. Bob Chapman, Jesse Trentadue. We'll talk to you both more in the future as these things unfold. And Bob, I'll see you, Lord willing, next Friday live.
You got it.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, sir.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.